begin with a story from about 6 years ago. When I was in 5th grade, I was to open a choir concert with a solo. But as I looked out over the crowd, I completely froze. My memory failed me. And even now, as I look back on that moment, I cringe inwardly. I know 5th grade me would have loved to forget it. I'm sure we all have moments that are embarrassing, sad, or even painful. But imagine, if you could just erase all traces of such unwanted moments, would you do it? But I know a 5th grade concert might seem a little trivial. So what about for something slightly more important, like a failed personal relationship? The movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind delves into the intricacies of relationships and the tragedy of loss. In the movie, Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet play a couple that attempts to erase all memories of their relationship with each other after a painful breakup. But imagine if you could erase a memory of a painful relationship that you've had. Would you do it? Now let's take this even farther. What about for memories that are actively harmful? If someone were to witness a family member getting killed, or if they've gone through a brutal rape, do you think they should be allowed to erase the memories that caused them pain? How amazing would it be if we could erase a terrible memory at the touch of a button? Yet, how frightening would it be if we could erase a happy memory with the touch of the same button? Depending on how we choose to accept it, memory manipulation could become the future of how we perceive our past. The last 100 years of research into neuroscience have shown us that the brain works like an incredibly vast computer. When neurons, the nerve cells within our brains, fire, they send out electrical impulses to other neurons. This pattern of connections between neurons is what leads to thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. From this knowledge, scientists have now developed technology called optogenetics. By shining light on specific neurons, they have learned how to control particular functions of our brains. To put it simply, light would act as an on or off switch for neurons controlling memory. This means that we can either erase or restore memories in our brains. And this incredible new technology could be applied in so many different ways. Dylan Jones, a 37-year-old war veteran who served 3 times in Afghanistan, took his own life just a month before he was due to marry. Dylan suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, also known as survivor's guilt. After he returned home from the war, Dylan's hands would tremor so violently that he couldn't tie his own shoes. And he had night terrors so vivid that he often woke up hoarse the next morning. Dylan is not alone. 1 in 5 Americans who commit suicide is a war veteran with PTSD. 1 in 5. Even though veterans only make up 13% of the American population, according to the Department of Veterans Affairs. With memory manipulation, this could change. By pinpointing and erasing the particular memories that caused these war veterans trauma, we could save millions of lives. And veterans like Dylan would be able to live unhindered by their traumatic pasts. The possible applications for memory manipulation could also extend to substance abuse and addiction. Since one of the toughest parts of rehabilitation is the positive feeling associated with substances like drugs or alcohol. By erasing the positive memories with these substances, rehabilitation could be made much easier. This, in turn, could help many people move on from their past mistakes and start afresh. On another note, in 1901, a woman named Auguste was admitted to a medical clinic in Germany. She could not remember even the basic details of her life, and her doctors did not understand her condition, so they couldn't help her. She died 5 years later in 1906. Auguste was the first person to be diagnosed with what we now know to be Alzheimer's disease. By the year 2050, an estimated 150 million people will be affected by this disease. Essentially, if you live to age 85, you have a 50% chance of suffering from Alzheimer's. Statistically speaking, this means that you would either suffer from the disease yourself or be caring for someone, like a spouse or partner, that had the disease. Alzheimer's is yet another disorder that could be cured with memory manipulation. The memories of Alzheimer's patients could be restored through the use of optogenetic on switches to reactivate lost memories. Since Alzheimer's is also currently the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, memory manipulation could protect people from this debilitating, even fatal disorder. But where there are possibilities, there are also ethical and philosophical concerns for this new technology. With such a new technology, many are worried about the invasiveness of the scientific technique used. Will it damage other parts of our brains? Does it have side effects? How can we be sure? A lack of accuracy in such a risky new technology could lead to dangerous side effects, including, potentially, the eradication of positive memories. Others are also worried about the choices that we will have to make down the road if we choose to accept this technology. Should we, as a society, erase memories of tragic events like the Holocaust, other genocides, or natural disasters? While countless people are pained by the mention of such events, others wonder, aren't the bad memories needed to push society to progress? After all, if we erase all memories of our past adversities, wouldn't that strip us of sympathy and empathy for horrifying events in the future? But the real question here is, if we were to erase memories of painful events like the Holocaust, would these events be more likely to repeat themselves in the future? Memory manipulation could also leave the door open for things like historical falsification. In the words of Winston Churchill, history is in the hands of the victors. This means that in the future, any despotic rulers or victors in international conflicts could potentially use this technology to erase all memories of opposing viewpoints or minority group cultures. People could be forced to forget about their own cultural identities. This also applies on an individual level. If in the wrong hands, memory manipulation could be used to change memories of criminal records or family history. I'm sure some of you have seen the TV show, Criminal Minds. In one episode, a serial killer who has committed several murders goes into a coma and wakes up 4 years later with amnesia. Investigators have to decide how to try this murderer, given that when he wakes up, he does not remember anything about what he has done. If this was a real-life scenario, the question of identity would be brought up. Just because the murderer did not remember his crimes, would he be considered a changed man? In other words, does memory manipulation change who you are? This question is especially fascinating because it deals with the definition of the self. Some people believe that each memory is an individual contributor to personal identity. Therefore, playing with our memories would be altering our own identities. Others believe that personal identity should be what we want it to be. Therefore, if we choose to erase or restore a memory and actively alter ourselves, then that should be accepted. However, what if some people decided to erase all of their bad memories? What would they be left with? After all, everything we perceive is relative, and memories are no different. So, in the status quo, if we perceive certain memories as good, that's mainly because we can contrast them with other memories that are worse. So if we erase all of our bad memories, won't our good memories simply become mediocre or unimportant? Of course, another area we have to address is freedom of choice. If people so choose that they want to manipulate their own memories, shouldn't they be allowed to do so? American cognitive psychologist and expert on the human memory, Elizabeth Loftus, delved into this question with a study. She asked people, if they were the victims of a vicious attack, would they want to take a memory-erasing drug? 80% said no. Loftus was surprised, and she thought maybe this was because people would want to testify against the perpetrator of the crime. So she ran the study again, this time asking, if these people were to witness a military buddy being blown up by an IED overseas, would they take the drug then? 80% still refused. Clearly, there are still a ways to go before memory manipulation becomes commonly accepted in our society. However, with further research and regulations, this technology could become safer, more effective, and more far-reaching in its impacts. Yes, there are risks to this technology, and yes, we must consider them. But with these risks come possibilities to cure countless memory-related disorders and allow people to redefine their own identities. Imagine the smiles on the faces of war veterans who had previously suffered from PTSD. Imagine saving millions of lives that would otherwise have been lost to Alzheimer's disease and eliminating Alzheimer's as a leading cause of death. Imagine the victim of a brutal assault being able to live their life unhindered by the stigma and trauma of their incident haunting them every day. We, as a society, could play it safe, searching for a foolproof medical solution before exploring further. But if we dare to dream, to push the boundaries of this new technology, the sky is the limit. So you decide, with everything I've just said in mind, with all of these impacts and perspectives in mind, if you could decide to manipulate your memory, would you do it? Thank you.